Alright, Nitro RC World here. I'm going to show you this starter system that I've come up with. If you can't get this helicopter starter shaft starter system here that I showed you in another video previous to this one, I'm going to be showing you how to make this one here. The drill. This is a 1/2 inch diameter extension, and I've used the long extension for the Revo that I have. Of course they have smaller ones, but I purchased the longer one from my Revo. So this is what you end up with here. This is a 19mm socket, 3/8 drive, and that fits on there on your 3.3. I'm going counterclockwise just to show you that there's plenty of clearance here, but normally it starts clockwise when you start your motor. So you've got a 19mm socket, 3/8 drive, and you take apart your Traxxas pull starter. Take the 2 screws out of there and take it apart. And this here, this is going to be this part of the pull starter is going to have some big wheels on there that you have to nip down and file down, and it'll end up looking like this. That'll fit in this 19mm socket here. So the way you do that is you nip this down, this wheel here, you nip this down so it's small enough to give you some slop in there, because you don't want that touching anything when you get this part here. You get this part here filed down just the right amount so it just barely slides in there. So you keep filing this down. Start with this slot here. You keep filing this down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then turn it 1/8 of a turn at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And keep turning it like that, so you can get this filed down around here as evenly as you can, so this fits in there. It just barely slides in there, so it's even around here, symmetrical. The more accurately you can get this to fit in there, the less wear and tear on your starter system, on your pull start shaft. So you want to get this to fit in there nice and snug, and as evenly as you can around there. So you keep filing that down around there, and you're going to have to bevel this top edge here. Go around there and you bevel that so that fits in there. But this part right down here on the bottom here, you want that to fit as tight around there as you can. Nice snug fit accurately. You want to get that as round in there as you can get it, symmetrical as you can get it. So once you've got that fit in there, and you get some of this dense foam, this is some foam from the Traxxas pipe accessory that I used. And you cut that down, and get that in there as a spacer. So like if this foam is too thick, here's an example. You put that in there and you can see it's not letting it go down in there. So you're going to have to trim this down so it lets it slide in there without pushing it back up. You want it to sit down in there without it being pushed back up by the foam. So once you've got that fit in there, and you get that all sanded, get this all roughed up with sandpaper. Go around there, rough this all up, sandpaper, and get it all roughed up. Get this all roughed up around there. Go all right around, get this all roughed up. Get this all roughed up around here. And clean that all out. And you can put some shoe goo down in there. Get that shoe goo in there. It's clamped in there. Try to get this set in there so it's as symmetrical as you can get it. This pull starter part, symmetrical around there as you can get it. Get this clamped in there. Get this clamped on there. Get most of that shoe goo cleaned off of there. And let that sit. One of the things that's going to help you to get that cured is take a hot rod, get some wire or something, heat that up so you can burn a hole into that foam in there. That'll help it cure. So then you've got this clamped, and you let that cure for like 2 or 3 days. You let that cure. Once that's cured, and you can take, grind down and want to grind down into that. You don't want to go down into this too far, but you want to leave just a little bit of material down here and grind down into that, and then grind into the through this plastic into your one-way bearing a little bit. Grind into that. Do that in 4 spots. Grind down into that 4 spots around here. Grind down into that, grind into it, grind into your one-way bearing. You don't want to go into the bearing itself, but there's plenty of material here around your one-way bearing where you can grind into that. Then you put some shoe glue in there. Get that shoe glue in there. Let that shoe glue set. Then after a day or two after that shoe glue sets, then you can get these screws in there. You want that screw right in the middle of this. Right in the middle of that material there. Right in the middle of that material of this plastic there. Get that drilled in there. And you can tap these screws into it. And you can see that hole there. See that hole there? You get that screw tapped in there. You want to carefully tap that. Want to carefully tap that in there as square as you can get it. Tapped it in there, square as you can get it. Right into one of these spokes. There's a spoke here on this side, and there's a spoke here on this side. Get those screws started in there. And something I forgot to mention before you put this in there, before you shoe glue that in there, I'm going to get this all scratched up. It's all scratched around there. Get it all scratched all the way around. You see how I got these scratches? You want to get those scratches down deep. And once you've got that scratched up, then you can put the shoe glue in there. Clamp it on there and get that all cleaned off. Shoe glue. Let that set for a couple days. And there's 2 screws. 2 different kinds of screws. Bigger screw here is for tapping. I'm going to tap that hole, drill that 1/16. And get that tapped in there square as you can get it. Tap this in there square. And once you've got that tapped in there, then you can use these smaller type of screws. You're going to have to cut that off. And then round it off. So that screw can go into the divot of that one-way bearing that you ground into there. Into that one-way bearing, the divot you ground into it. So that goes in there. And you also want to get, when you grind these, 4 areas around there. Make them wide enough, about 1/8 inch wide. Grind that down in there. Go into your one-way bearing. Grind into there. 4 evenly spaced areas. Staying away from these 2 areas here for your screws. Once you've got those screws drilled and started in there, then you can go into there with this die grinder, with this small die grinder bit, your Dremel bit, and go in there, carefully grind into that, go into your one-way bearing, where you get a little divot. You get a little divot in there where the screw can go in there. And you go the same on the other side. You got the screw in there, in that spoke there. And you'll end up with this here. Got the screw on this side, the screw on this side, and you've got all those areas where you ground into there with your Dremel. You ground into this plastic, and you ground into the one-way bearing a little ways. 4 spots around here. That'll help keep this from twisting and this one-way bearing from pulling out when you're starting your engine. And when you pull that off of there, that one-way bearing will stay in there. When you pull this off of there. Alright. So that's how I make this starter system. This drill. And then you've got this starter system for your 3.3 or your 2.5. So that's how I make it. All right. Above all,